Once, in a thriving city nestled by the sea, there lived a woman named Eliza. She was admired by all who knew her, known for her sharp mind, elegance, and the success she'd achieved in the high society of the city. Eliza had come from humble beginnings, but her ambition and her ability to navigate the world of wealth and influence had lifted her to the top. She was the talk of the town, attending the most exclusive events and hosting lavish parties. But as Eliza's status grew, so did her sense of superiority. She began to look down on those who hadn't achieved what she had, dismissing their choices, their careers, their relationships, and even their lives. Her judgment was sharp, her words cutting. She would sneer at the young artist who struggled to make a living, gossip about the woman with a broken marriage, and ridicule those who weren't as fashionable or polished as she was. She told herself it was because she knew better, that the people she judged were simply failing to see the right way to live. She believed that her hard work and refined taste had set her apart, and those who weren't on her level must somehow be lacking. One winter, a new neighbor moved into the apartment next door. Her name was Clara, a quiet woman in her early 30s. She wasn't rich, nor did she wear the latest fashions. Clara worked as a nurse, spending long hours caring for others in the city's overcrowded hospitals. Eliza noticed her immediately, her old worn clothes, her humble car, her simple no-frills lifestyle. Eliza wasted no time in making judgments about Clara. How can someone live so plainly in this city, she thought. She doesn't even try to improve herself. Doesn't she know the value of appearances? She'll never understand what it means to truly succeed. Clara, to Eliza's surprise, didn't respond with anger or defensiveness. Instead, she simply said, "I may not have the things you do, but I try to make a difference in the world. I help people. I care for them. I don't need to be anything other than who I am." Eliza dismissed her words, believing them to be naive. She couldn't understand Clara's perspective, her humility, or the depth of the work she did. The nurse seemed so unremarkable. Weeks went by, and Eliza continued with her judgments, feeling ever more convinced of her superiority. But slowly she began to notice something. Clara wasn't just a quiet woman, she was deeply respected. When Eliza would attend her social events, she often overheard people speaking of Clara with admiration, telling stories of how Clara had helped them in a time of need, how she had volunteered at the hospital or stayed late to care for a patient when no one else would. People from all walks of life spoke of her compassion and dedication. Meanwhile, Eliza's own life began to unravel. The gossip that had once fueled her rise now began to haunt her. Her sharp tongue, once seen as clever, was now viewed as cruel. People started to avoid her, sensing her arrogance, her tendency to belittle others. Invitations to events became fewer, and soon her social circle had shrunk to those who shared her shallow values, who admired her only for her wealth and status. Yet even they began to grow tired of her judgmental nature. One night, a severe storm struck the city. Eliza's apartment building was damaged, and the power went out. She was trapped in the darkness, alone and cold. Desperate, she called Clara for help, knowing that Clara worked nearby at the hospital and might be able to assist her. Without hesitation, Clara arrived at Eliza's apartment, bringing blankets, water, and a flashlight. She quietly assessed the damage and helped Eliza secure the building as best as she could until help arrived. Throughout the entire night, Clara never spoke of her own struggles or her modest life. She simply offered kindness, her actions speaking louder than any words could. As Clara left the next morning, Eliza, feeling both humbled and ashamed, tried to apologize. But Clara simply smiled and said, "I don't need your apologies. Just remember, it's not what we have, but what we give that truly matters." That moment marked a turning point for Eliza. She saw how much Clara had given, not just to her, but to the world. how despite living with far less, Clara had far more grace, generosity and kindness than Eliza had ever known. Eliza realized that her obsession with appearances, with judgment, had alienated her from true connection. However, it was too late. The damage to her reputation was irreparable. People who had once looked up to her now saw her for what she had become, a bitter, judgmental woman who had failed to appreciate the value of humility and compassion. Eliza's wealth and status were no longer enough to protect her from the loneliness that followed. She never forgot Clara's words. "It's not what we have, but what we give." But by then she had fallen too far from grace, unable to rebuild the meaningful relationships she had cast aside in her pursuit of superiority. Eliza's story became a cautionary tale in the city, a reminder that judgment and pride, when left unchecked, could lead to a fall from grace that even wealth and status couldn't save.